And I meant to ask you a little bit more about Dan Lazar. We went back to when you first met, and then I got sidetracked with my crazy ranting about Batman. But happens all the time.
Yeah.
Uh, with at what point did you develop this relationship with Dan and with your editor, who was Kate? Is that right?
Cake. Yeah.
Kate. At what point did you develop this relationship where you trust them? How involved? I mean, would you send them chapter one and an outline, and hey, this is what I've got going? When do they come in and start collaborating?
I get more to like 80 pages in before I'll show Dan. Um, and I work with Dan in the early part of the process, and with Wink, we actually finished. I mean, I wrote the whole book with working with Dan in chunks. I would send him chunks, and then we kind of talk again, and then so we didn't show it to the publisher or anything until it was written. Now then I started working with Kate and the publisher, and we started working on improving it even more, I guess would be the word, or taking out the rough parts. There were parts that they weren't sure about, that sort of thing. We worked through all that. But yeah, I usually don't show anything to Dan until I get 80, 50, 80, 100 pages in, until I feel like he can really get the flavor for what I'm trying to do.
Is he the first reader at that point, or do you have other readers lined up before it gets to him?
No, he's my first reader. I usually just send it to him. That's not entirely true. I have a friend, Mitch Larson, who at one point he read. He wrote Pennyroyal Academy, if you're familiar with that book.
Oh, sure.
He and I did a book tour together for one of my Zarf books, and him and Ursula Vernon,
Sure.
The three of us did a book tour together. It was so much fun. So at one point, Mitch did read the first few chapters of Wink, and I got some feedback from him. But yeah, usually Dan is my first stop, and I really trust his views. He has such a good way of seeing what I'm trying to do. Here's how you might be able to make it better. But then, as an agent, he has the market, things like that in the back of his mind. He knows he has sort of a sixth sense of what people are looking for, what's already out there. I mean, I think I read quite a bit, but there's no way you can know everything that's coming out. And it's pretty amazing that an agent can have that much of a finger on the pulse of what's going on and say, oh, there's a book that they're doing over at such and such publisher that's just like this. You might want to steer away from that sort of thing. That's helpful too. It's incredibly helpful. As far as when that all started, it was when I did the first Zarf book, and I'd say early on in the process of doing Zarf, I just felt very comfortable with both my agent and my editor, and luckily I've continued to work with both of them. So I consider that it's just a pleasure to work with both of them.
Well, it's obviously working out.
yeah, and I feel really lucky. I don't know what it would be like to work with an agent and an editor who you didn't get along with. I can't imagine. So yeah, I count my blessings as far as that's concerned.
It's one of those things that, the metaphor that writers often toss out is my books are my children. Well, if that's true, when you're bringing Dan in at 80 pages, that's your co-parent.
Yeah. And usually the 80 page is more of just a check. Like, I'm not way out of my mind that this is something, right? And then I go back and I'll write 100 pages more, or the first one is sort of a check-in, and then but I'm sure everybody doesn't work that way, but even if it's just a sort of a little quick pat on the back, I kind of appreciate that. So works for me at this point.
Well, writers desperately need those pat on the backs. That's everything.
We're all neurotic, and yeah. So that's part of it. Is if I don't show it to somebody, if I were to just keep working, my neuroses would eat me alive. So I have to at least somebody to tell me it doesn't suck, and then I'm like, okay, I can keep working on this. Sorry, you can edit that word out.
What, suck?
Yeah.
Oh, I think we can handle that.
Okay, good. That's my Midwest nice again.
I felt. I try to keep the show profanity free, which sometimes feels like a real disservice. Like when I had Daniel Jose Older on here. I've got one hand tied behind his back. That man is poetic. His profanity. Yeah. Why would we take that away? It was actually Kathy Appelt was the first person I would least imagine would break it. She was the first person to what the heck is my show? She used the word asshat.
That's one of my favorites. Right. That's perfect. Like, it's funny, you're the second person today to mention my Midwesternness. I filled out a questionnaire today, and somebody was like, "Oh yeah, you filled that out in a very Midwestern way," or something like that. And I was like, "Okay, I need to work on that," because I think that's my first impression, Rob. If you got to know me a little bit better, I would, that's when the language gets saltier, and I get a little less Midwestern. Although I don't know, it's in my blood. I can't help it.
I don't think I've ever met a teacher or a children's book writer that you get them away from the events and maybe a drink or two, and they're some of the most profane people on earth. God bless them, and they need to be. You've been very responsible. You kept it at bay all this time. Right. Now the kids are gone. Let it run rampant.
Yep, let the pressure valve off. Yeah.
Well, before we get there, it's probably time for me to ask you my final question, and then we can go be wicked demons.
Okay.
My final question is always some variation of if there was something you could go back and tell young Rob Harrell back when he's waiting tables and struggling, or at any point in your journey. That maybe would have made a tremendous amount of difference for you, that would have made things easier, or that might make things easier for all the authors listening to us now, what would you go back and tell yourself?
I think the main thing I would tell myself is to let go of this idea. I think I always had this idea that authors, successful cartoonists, whoever it may be that's doing well in the business, that they know something. Like, there's this feeling that they know something I don't. There's not that it's like a secret club. I just mean that eventually, if I listen to enough of them or something, that I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna figure out what that one key element is that I need to focus on. I wanted to write a book for forever. And I now that I'm writing books, I realized the reason I didn't write books sooner was because I didn't write books sooner. If that makes sense. It's like one time I went to a book signing and a book talk. Clive Barker was doing a talk at Barnes and Noble, and I went in. Afterwards, I asked him, what's your one piece of advice for somebody who wants to write a book but hasn't written a book? And his advice was something along the lines of start writing on page 1, write until you get to about 500 pages, and then end it. And which sounds really snarky, but it stuck with me. And it's just doing it. And the thing that I think is interesting about writing a book is there's nothing graceful about it. There's nothing. I don't think there's anything romantic about it. I think I always pictured like sitting under a tree by a stream writing a book. It's just hard work. You just start writing, You write a bunch of stuff, and then you wait a little while, and you go back and you see if any of it's good. Take out the stuff that's not good. You keep the stuff that is good, and you keep working. And it's just like slugging away. In a way, it's like digging a ditch. It is hard work, and you just got to do it. And I wish I could go back and tell myself. And granted, maybe I just wasn't ready to write a book yet when I was younger. I know I had a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, wasting your time getting a nationally syndicated comic strip.
yeah. Well, yeah. But that was the same thing. The idea is like, it's real easy. The easiest thing is to sit around and complain and think, why aren't I writing a book? The hard part is to sit down and crack open your laptop or your notebook and start writing. And then, then I think I tried writing things, and I would write 25 pages and I would lose interest in it. And I think what I needed to do was I think at 25 pages, I realized this is really hard. This isn't flowing out of me in the way you might see in a movie. And that's when I should have just said, no, I'm not going to get up for the next 3 hours. I mean, sure, you got to stand up so you don't get problems with your legs.
Sure.
Sorry, it came out wrong. But you got to stand up every once in a while. But what I mean is you just kind of hunker down, and I hate that term because everybody's saying that about COVID-19, but you got to just sit down, and sometimes it's not comfortable and your back hurts and you're tired and you're whatever, but you just got to do it and just keep cranking away. And that's not probably the kind of inspirational thing you wanted me to say for young writers, but there isn't a trick. There isn't at least if there is, I haven't found it yet. Somebody call me and tell me if there is one, because that'd be great if there was a trick.
There is, and I'll be talking all about it at the Indiana Writer Center Writing Workshop. Sign
okay,
up.
I'll be there. I'll be there.
The secret.
But I just think I could show you some of the stuff I wrote early on Wink, and you wouldn't like it, and it was just a question of going back into it and going back into it and going back into it, and it gets better each time. And so anyway, I mean, I'm trying to think of something a little more upbeat that I could share, but I wish I could tell younger me not to worry so much. I'm a worrier by nature, and that may be part of what drives me. You said something about me being out selling T-shirts.
I'm just inferring. I mean, just based on the fact that you are where you are, you've done what you've done.
But I wouldn't have gotten here without I wouldn't have gotten here without the worrying, I think. So maybe that's an intrinsic part of me, because the worrying is what sometimes propels you. So maybe older me would come back to me now and tell me to worry less. That would be nice. So it's fun. I like it, but it is a lot of work. And so I think that's what I would tell my younger self. And I would probably say, just get busy. Start now. Don't wait. I'm 51 and I have this book out, and I see much younger people coming out. And again, maybe they were ready and I wasn't ready, but there is part of me that thinks, well, I wish I knew that it's just roll up your sleeves and start typing. And you'll get there. And then I would also tell younger me or a younger writer to enjoy it, enjoy the ride, because those years when you struggle and you're waiting tables and you're coming back and working on things at 3 a.m, that's kind of a magical time. So don't be in any rush to get past that. Stressful and you're tired and all that, but it's also kind of the fun part.
Well, if you could be assured, this is a little thought exercise I like to do, is if you could be assured that, say, I don't know, age 45, on that date, Everything is, the stars are going to align. You will have made it as an author. You will be the most famous. You'll be Tomi Adeyemi famous. It'll be amazing for you. But at 45, okay. But do those first 44 years not count? That's still a significant portion of your life. For God's sake, enjoy that part too.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, that's the other thing is I think I tried writing some things. I said I'd get to 25 pages and I'd write what you like. That's probably the other most important thing. I think I spent years trying to figure out how to write something that other people would like. And if you write what you like, you're going to enjoy what you're doing. And if you enjoy what you're doing, our chances are somebody else is going to enjoy what you're doing. I hope I've got that right. I'm not sure.
That's an extremely inspirational note to end on. We got there.
We got there. Okay. Whew. I didn't want you people to think. I didn't want anybody to watch this and be like, "Man, that guy was a downer."
No, I think honestly, telling people that the inspiration stuff is good, but also the practical, sit down and get to work. It's not. I've actually, you can't see it above my desk. I've got a quote from Grapes of Wrath. It just says, just shut up and get to work. You ain't big enough or mean enough to worry God much. I have that right above my desk, and I look at it on a regular basis. I like it. I've just got to get it done. But I'm a fellow Midwesterner, so who knows?
Right. Yeah, we're meant to work in the fields or something. So I think we've got that work ethic.
Blind leading the blind. I don't know.
Yeah.
When quarantine is behind us, let's get a cup of coffee. We're about 25, 30 minutes away from each other, I think. Let's make that happen. In the meantime, where can esteemed audience find you online, get their copies of books, get the copy of Wink, follow you on Twitter, all that stuff?
You can find me on Twitter at Harrell Rob. It's Harrell Rob. On Instagram, I'm RobTop. It's ROBBTOPP. Back from the Big Top days when I was doing the comic strip. That's where that name comes from. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me at robharrell.com, and that will take you to places where you can buy the book or all of the books. I think that's about it. I don't have a TikTok yet, so nobody wants to see me dance.
We've got time. I may try all sorts of different social media apps before this quarantine is over.
Right. A friend of mine just sent me his whole family doing some dance thing on TikTok, and I was like, oh no, I'm not taking that jump. But so right now that's where I am, and I hope to be posting some videos on during this quarantine. I think I'm going to be doing. I already posted a how to draw Bat Pig video, a video sort of introducing the book. I'm trying to do more. They're pushing me to do more. Social media is not my natural state of living, but I'm working on it. And it's great because it's so great that there's a way to connect with people. Because imagine if this quarantine had happened and you had a book coming out in the early 80s or something. There'd be no way to get the word out almost. So, thank goodness for social media at this point. And we're able to do this.
Yeah, no, this is absolutely wonderful. It's like a writer's conference every week for me that I can do here in the comfort of my home. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And we've got a great program here. So now I got to go back and binge them all. I've got the time.
You do as well, esteemed audience.
I've listened to a few, but you've got a lot of